All right, welcome back to our weekly fantasy basketball Q&A over here on Rotoworld. I'm Noah Rubin, once again joined by the great Adam King. What adjective do we want to say that what kind of people call you Kingy? Because I know last week I said cool people, but I don't know if that really resonates. But the fantasy basketball nerds know to call you Kingy, and that's the exclusive group that you have to be a part of to know Kingy, which some people may say are the cool people. Maybe not everybody agrees, but Kingy, it's extra early there, so I appreciate you getting up to answer some questions with me. How are you doing?
Doing okay. Yeah, it is a little bit early, daylight savings this time of year. In a couple of weeks, it's going to be even earlier because our clocks are about to go back in, I want to say, 2 or 3 weeks. So, good to be here. It's 6:30 in the morning. No one else is awake, but hopefully I'm not making too much noise.
Yeah, well, I know that some of the injury news gets exciting, but hopefully you won't yell and scream and wake anybody up. But a couple things we can kind of mention before we get into some of these trades. Second night of a back-to-back for the Spurs. Victor Wembanyama and Devin Vassell both off the injury report, both going to play, which is good to see considering Wemby had missed their previous 2 games and Vassell had just missed their last one. So probably not going to have any interest in Zach Collins or anybody else there. But a guy that is, there we go. A couple of guys that are going to be out tonight for the Celtics. Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, and Kristaps Porzingis all out. If I'm not mistaken, Kristaps was also out last night. Yep. So that could be more than just these 2 games. He could remain out longer for the rest of this week, which would really stink for people that need him for the fantasy playoffs. Who are the exciting guys in Boston? Because Drew Holiday is going to be back, and Derek White and Jason Tatum are both going to play. Obviously, those guys are rostered everywhere, but who else are you looking at in Boston?
Look, I think it's probably Pritchard, Hauser. I feel like because it's an easy. Who are they playing? Utah?
I believe, yes, Utah.
Yeah, so probably a pretty easy matchup. On paper anyway. So I guess Pritchard, Hauser. It's who starts at center. It has been Cornette, so I assume it's Cornette. But does Xavier Tillman get some minutes here finally? I think Cornette's probably the safer option because when this has been the case earlier in the season, he's played and he can be a good source of blocks and rebounds and hit some threes from the center spot. So it's probably Cornette that I'm giving a look. And then both Pritchard and Hauser, they get a bump as well. But again, against Utah, like this, we don't know. This game could be a blowout. So they could be rolling with, I don't know, Jaden Springer. Maybe he gets a run. O'Shea Brissett. Who really knows if the game's a blowout? But, yeah, they're the guys I'd go with.
Yeah, Pritchard specializes playing against teams that they blow out anyway, because like last night they beat Portland by 22. Pritchard had 11 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists while playing alongside Tatum Brown and Derek White in the starting lineup. And Sam Hauser had 22 points and 6 threes off the bench. Cornette played 21 minutes, whereas Xavier Tillman didn't play at all. Just coach's decision there. So, yeah, I mean, with even less players available tonight, like maybe Pritchard comes off the bench with Drew Holiday back, but then Sam Hauser starts in place of Jaylen Brown. So maybe Hauser over Pritchard, but then Hauser's really only getting you points and threes consistently. So maybe Pritchard is going to give you some more well-rounded production. But it's hard to imagine him playing 30 minutes unless it is a blowout with both Derek White and Drew Holiday available. But still going to be some guys that don't normally produce consistently are going to be worth a look for Boston in that game. Let's see. Chris Middleton is going to stay out tonight. Rashawn Holmes is also going to be out for Washington. So I believe that means we'll see Kyle Kuzma at center again, which is, a lot of fun. Steph not expected to play on Wednesday, which means it should be another start for Chris Paul. And honestly, a lot of guys for Golden State outside of just the usual suspects have been producing pretty solid value. Is there anybody in Golden State that you're particularly excited about? Because, in their last game, Pajemski and Trace Jackson Davis got pushed to the bench, but they both played really well and had solid lines. Andrew Wiggins even scored in double digits. So anybody in Golden State in particular that interests you, since they kind of need a little bit of extra juice with Steph out?
Yeah, I mean, Trace Jackson Davis was good. Part of this was probably the matchup. I know it wasn't a comfortable victory, but they were only playing the Spurs. People would have seen that dunk. It seemed to be all over social media, and I'd question whether he used his off arm to move Wemby. If you watch it, he does push Wemby's blocking arm away. So interesting that no one actually brought up that might have been an offensive foul. But look, Wemby's going to be on a lot of posters, that's for sure. But he's also going to be on the other end of a lot of posters too. So, look, I think it's probably Jackson Davis. If Pajemski is available, he's probably not. He's sort of flirted with 12-team value for most of the season. He's probably rostered with Curry out. I'm hoping Curry only misses one more game, but time will tell. But beyond those guys, probably not. Wiggins, I guess, if you want to give Wiggins a look, but he's been so inconsistent that I'd rather stream someone else, I think.
Yeah. And we'll go ahead and get into some of these questions here. This one, a 12-team head-to-head ESPN points league. Should I drop Jordan Clarkson, Josh Giddey, or Jabari Smith? Kingy, has the recent resurgence of Josh Giddey made you feel a little bit more confident in keeping him around, or would you rather kind of go with the other two guys?
I wouldn't be dropping Jabari Smith because Şengün is out. So I think Smith is probably going to spend some time at center. So I think he's probably one of the winners from that injury. So I probably wouldn't drop Jabari. It's probably between Clarkson and Giddey. Giddey has been better. Picked him up in a couple of leagues as a streamer, and I've held on to him. Last game he only played 20-odd minutes, but it was a blowout, so I wouldn't pay too much attention to that one. And Jordan Clarkson is a points league specialist, really, because that's what he does. He scores the basketball. Are they going to sort of shut him down? Maybe. It looks like they're already heading that way with Lauri Markkanen. At the moment, I don't know. It's probably Giddey still, I think, in a points league that I'm dropping there.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Since it's ESPN, if it's just ESPN standard scoring, obviously it takes field goal percentage a little bit more into account, and Giddey's has been better recently. And Jordan Clarkson will have nights where he just shoots really bad, but he's not going to stop shooting. And then he's going to have nights where he doesn't miss. But I think the upside of Jordan Clarkson, 3 games ago, he had 38 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, and shot 50% from the field. Josh Giddey's not getting you anywhere near that. So if you're trying to win the playoffs, you don't do it by making the safe choice. I think Clarkson's upside there just gives him the edge for me.
Yep, agreed.
Hey guys, hope the playoffs are going well for both of you. It's not. That's why we have started doing a mock draft for next season. You can check that out if you want. But should I drop Isaac Okoro for Herb Jones tomorrow? Let me see what do you think about that off the top of your head as I try and figure out their matchups?
Well, I know Okoro has been really good. Just having a look at Herb Jones.
Well, they play each other tomorrow, so that helps.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and obviously, our playoffs aren't going well, so I don't have as many teams active anymore, which means I don't have as many players active. Herb's been Herb. I don't know. I don't think so. I think I'd hold Okoro here, just with the injuries that the Cavs have at the moment. Herb, he had a little run there of double-digit scoring, but he's now scored 7 or fewer in 3 of the last 4 games. Does get you some steals, but so does Okoro. I think Okoro had 4 steals in his last game. So
he did last night, yeah.
Yeah, so I think I'd stick with Okoro there.
Yeah, and Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus have already been ruled out, I believe. Maybe that's one for Monday. That's just for Monday. So assuming all those guys stay out and Isaac Okoro is still starting, then I would hold on to him.
Yeah.
But if something changes and he's pushed back to the bench, which I'm assuming we'll get a better idea of what that looks like after the injury report drops in like a little over an hour, maybe like an hour and a half, within the next few hours, a better indication of what their rotation will look like for that game. But yeah, if Mitchell and Strus are still out, I think I'd lean Okoro.
Yep.
All right, pick 2 to drop between Precious Achiuwa, Micic, Daniel Gafford, Keontae George, and Jalen Suggs. Oof. This is, I would say, just off the top of my head without looking at any numbers, a pretty tough one. Micic has been pretty solid, not great, but I think he's a guy to roster in 12-team leagues. But I think all these guys are kind of 12-team rosterable players at this point. Do you agree with that statement, or is there anybody you're saying is definitely a drop here?
No, I think they probably should all be rostered. And obviously they're all rostered by Thomas. And so to make that decision.
Shout out to Thomas.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, Gafford is the one there that sort of jumps out just because, not that I'm saying he would be the one that I would drop, but because his minutes have been up and down. He started the last couple of games, but before that he was coming off the bench playing under 10 minutes. So he's probably the one, if you're looking purely at role, whose role is probably the most uncertain. I think the rest of them are starting and starting for the foreseeable future. Precious, so OG could be back tonight, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's been an update there. So if Anunoby's back, Precious takes a hit. I don't think Anunoby's going to come in and, well, although it is Tom Thibodeau, I was going to say he's not going to come in and play 35 minutes out of the gate, but with Tom Thibodeau as your coach, he might. And Suggs, I don't know, Suggs has been all right. His role is there. He's playing tonight, so is Fultz. I think it's really tough. I think you could make a case. It probably comes down a little bit to stats. What stats do you need? Do you need assists and threes, or do you need blocks and rebounds? If you don't need blocks or rebounds, I'd get rid of Gafford and probably Precious. If you don't need assists, I'd probably get rid of Micic and maybe one of the other two, Keontae or Suggs. I think so. For me, it's pretty close. So I would just have a look at what stats you need to win your week.
Yeah, I think I agree with that logic of it. Obviously, Gafford hasn't missed in like 5 games. That's just throwing this out there. It's not going to continue for the rest of the season. So if you're looking at just strictly his 9 cap value over the past week, it is amplified by the fact that he is shooting 100% from the floor. So it's a little bit higher. I think it's 28th over the past week on Basketball Monster. Yeah, I think it really just does come down to categories. Even if OG Anunoby's back, is Precious Achiuwa going to get pushed to the bench, or is he going to continue to start at the 4? Because if I'm not mistaken, he was actually, with the way it worked out, I think it was that Julius Randle and OG Anunoby went out of the lineup at the same time. So Precious Achiuwa moved into the starting lineup, and it wasn't ever it made it seem like he was replacing Randle, but he could have been kind of replacing OG. Is OG going to push Josh Hart to the bench? And obviously Hart's still going to see an insane amount of minutes. Or is he going to push Precious Achiuwa back to the bench? Is Achiuwa going to take a minutes hit just so they can keep giving Hart, 40 plus, but he continues to start? It's something we'll just have to wait and see what Tom Thibodeau does. But like you said, it wouldn't be shocking if, OG Anunoby's first game back. Cool, 42 minutes tonight, sir. That's what you have to play.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it does come down to categories. With Holmes and Bagley out, is Kispert a must roster with 4 games in 6 nights? I think it may depend a little bit on your league format and how desperate you are for threes, because the numbers haven't been great. I mean, the last game he had 22 points, 5 boards, 6 assists, 5 threes. A few games before that weren't as exciting. I don't know. Is Kispert a must roster player to you? Because, the minutes should be there. in this game.
Yeah, must roster, maybe not must roster, but I definitely think he's worth a look, especially with 4 games in 6 nights. He was good in their last game. I feel like there was a couple of games there where he had some foul. Yeah, so the 20-minute game that he had, or 19-minute game, that was a foul trouble. He had early fouls in that game, so didn't play a lot. Look, if he's going to play 30 minutes a night, which they seem to be leaning into just running with that small lineup. So, yeah, I think, as I said, must roster, maybe not must roster, but I had him in a league before I was kicked out of my league thanks to a heavy defeat. Not kicked out. Yeah,
I was like, what did you do?
No. Gotcha. I run the league. I'm not kicking myself out. And I had him in my lineup, and I would have just been rolling with him this week. So if that helps.
Yeah, they couldn't kick you out if they tried.
No, I'd kick everyone else out before me.
That's how you do it. All right. Is Bryce Sensabaugh better than Taylor Hendricks? Well, let's I'll add some parameters to this question. Is Bryce Sensabaugh a better fantasy option than Taylor Hendricks over the next week or two? I would say that if we're just talking about like a better player overall or better fantasy player overall, I would lean Taylor Hendricks. But as far as what's going to impact fantasy over the next few weeks, it's going to come down to Taylor Hendricks' health and availability. The initial, I think, diagnosis would be the word, was that he was going to miss at least 1 week. And then I think that was 1 week ago yesterday, and he's already been ruled out for tonight. So depending on how much longer he remains out is going to kind of dictate the answer to this question. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so I'd have Hendricks if we're just purely looking at who is the best player or who has the best outlook. If we're looking at who is best for tonight, for example, it's obviously sensible because he's playing, he's starting. So yeah, right now it's sensible. Long term, I think it's Hendricks.
Yeah, and Utah does play Boston tonight, and then they have home games against the Hawks and Timberwolves on Friday and Saturday. So only 3 games for this week. But at this point, like, that's not that bad. They're not one of the 2 teams. I think it's the Lakers and Timberwolves that only play 2 games this week. So not dramatically different to play 3 games as opposed to 4. So, this was a repeat, like added information from the previous one. Would it change your opinion in a 12-team ESPN points league? I think looking at it, I think it helps him a little bit because most of his value is going to come from points and threes. Yeah. Maybe makes him a more enticing option.
Yeah, I think so.
Would you drop Assar Thompson to pick up DeAndre Hunter in a 10-team 9-cat league where it's assist-turnover ratio as opposed to just turnovers, which I think would probably limit DeAndre Hunter's value even more, just because he's not going to get you assists, but he's not going to really get a ton of turnovers, but kind of cancels out if he's not really doing either. So really you're just getting points and threes here. Assar Thompson is going to get you more defensive value, less scoring. Would you drop Assar Thompson, who missed their last game, but I don't know if he's going to, because it was for an illness and that said with asthma. Yeah. So unclear if he's going to miss more than just that game. Obviously, if he does, then DeAndre Hunter's a better option. But would you drop Assar to pick up DeAndre Hunter?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Assar, I think it is as simple as what stats do you need with this one. If you're looking at points and threes, though, I would go Hunter. If you're looking at some defensive stuff, a couple of assists, potentially more rebounds, then I'd go Assar. But Assar's been, his minutes have been good, but his production's up and down. He missed the last game. The game before that, he left early because of the illness. Game before that, he played 43 minutes. So, but then, game before that, 9.6 rebounds, 8.6 rebounds. He's throwing in some steals. So I think with the injuries in Atlanta, Hunter's going to play big minutes. So I think Hunter is certainly safer, but Assar has a little bit more upside on the defensive end, especially.
Yeah, I would agree with that entirely, depending on what categories you need. Because, like you said, Hunter's just going to give you points pretty much. So both play 3 games for the rest of this week, so no edge to either player there either. So,
yeah.
What is our dynasty ranking for Marcus Smart? I have him 148. I don't know how that compares to other dynasty rankings from other analysts, but yeah, I have him 148 because, I mean, obviously I don't know if he's turned 30 yet, but he's around 30. Yeah. Solid producer of a couple stats, not a ton of upside there, just like a win now helpful player. But I don't imagine him ever kind of rising up that list, just because it kind of feels like, not that his best years are behind him, but like his best statistical years, he's either in them right now or they're behind him. That's just kind of one of the two options. So
yeah, I mean, you're the dynasty expert, but that's where I'd think that he'd be like top 150, top 140 in a dynasty league.
Mm-hmm. All right, my playoffs begin next week, and I have Joel Embiid, Evan Mobley, and Lauri Markkanen. I'm so sorry. Oh, wait, excuse me. And Trey Young. I didn't even finish the statement. It makes you feel better. I have a league where I have Embiid, Mobley, and Trey Young. So it's not as bad. And then another league where I have just Embiid and Mobley. So those guys, man. Those guys. Is it safe to drop 1 or 2 of these players to make room for a roster spot? Thanks. I would say... because if your playoffs begin next week, then that might be a league that kind of goes through the last week of the season or second to last week of the season, which makes it less of a guarantee to drop guys like Embiid and Trey Young. Because I would say off the top of my head, those would be the first 2 to drop, because I think that Mobley and Lauri Markkanen have a better chance of playing soon. Mobley did have, I think he's out of his walking boot. I think he was in a boot and now he's out of it. I think I saw that update. I guess I'll look for this update, but what were you thinking as far as which 2 of these guys you'd be looking to drop?
Yeah, it's hard. Although Markkanen is probably the one that we've had the least information about, I actually think that there's a decent chance he doesn't play a lot down the stretch. I dropped Trey Young in a couple of leagues, but I'm already in the playoffs. I feel like, I don't know, Atlanta, it's such a weird situation because I think they're going to make the play-in, even though they probably don't want to make the play-in, just because the teams below them aren't good. So
right.
I think even with the injuries that they've got, they're probably going to make the play-in, but they're not going to do anything. And so it's just hard to know whether they're going to get Trey Young back in the lineup or just say take the rest of the season off. Where I think Embiid, they want to get Embiid back out there as soon as possible. Mobley could be 2 weeks, could be a month. I don't know. If you need to, I'd be okay dropping Trey. I have to say that because I dropped him. And then I'd probably hold Markkanen just until we get more clarity around exactly how much time he's going to miss. And then out of Embiid and Mobley, it's probably Embiid still. Again, it's the Sixers are they're sliding down the rankings. So are they just going to? I don't think they're going to pack it in, but I don't know. With Embiid coming back and likely coming back, I won't say too early, but they're not going to give him time to recover. As soon as he's saying that he's good to go, he'll be back out there, but he's not going to play back-to-backs, probably limited minutes. So I would still be okay with dropping Trey and Embiid, but understand if you want to hold Embiid.
Yeah, and this is a blurb that we had up from last night. I think Raph wrote this one about Evan Mobley out of the walking boot. The idea is that Mobley's further away from a return than Donovan Mitchell. He's going to be reevaluated tomorrow, which is right before Cleveland starts a 3-game road trip. So we'll have a better idea tomorrow of how long he'll be out. But I also throw this up. This was a follow-up. Allows 3 players on the injured reserve for each team. So if you have to drop one, Trey Young. And if you need to drop a second one, then I guess it would be Joel Embiid, just off the idea that the other 2 are probably going to play sooner.
Yeah.
But it's also probably not the worst idea to hang on to him after that, like, just in case. If you have the room to do it. All right. Is Okongwu worth a stash on the IL for the next 2 weeks of the playoffs? And would you prefer Onyeka Okongwu or Marvin Bagley? Obviously, neither are healthy right now, but which of those 2 would you be looking to hold on to right now?
Again, Atlanta is such a hard team to know what they're going to do. Bagley, I don't think Bagley's worth holding. I just don't think the upside is high enough. I mean, I know he was starting and playing good minutes, but he's a 18 and 8 guy.
Yeah,
who doesn't really get you much defense. So if I was picking one, it would be Okongwu. If I was sort of going, okay, I want to keep one of these guys, it would be Okongwu. We don't really have an update on him, on when he's coming back, but it could be next week potentially. Feel like he's been out a while. When did he go out with his injury? Was it before the All-Star break?
So it's February 12th. So it's been actually a month today.
Been a month. Okay. So yeah, I'd probably prefer to stash Okongwu just because I think he has higher upside, and he was playing really well before the injury. In saying that, I don't know. I don't see either of them as must stash or anything like that. So I think streaming, or depends on your league settings, but if you're going to have other injuries coming up, so I don't know if I'd plug up one of my IL spots with these guys when you're probably going to need it for, like Porzingis, for example, who's out last night, tonight. I'd be moving him to an IL spot if I could. Yeah.
And the latest update that we have was that Okongwu would be reevaluated in 7 to 10 days, and this was on March 7th. So time between, I guess, like Thursday and Sunday of this upcoming, or I guess this week technically, we'll have some sort of idea of what Okongwu's timeline looks like, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he'll be back right after that. Like, it could be, and then it could be that it's a couple more weeks. So it's been, I think, a lot longer than initially expected. Because if I remember correctly, it was not yet. The first diagnosis was 7 to 10 days, and then foreseeable future, and then reevaluated in 2 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks. Now it's reevaluated in 7 to 10 days. So who knows? Like, it just hasn't been very clear. But obviously the upside's there, talent is there. But yeah, if he's not available, then it doesn't really matter. All right, shutdown watch. Is Vince Williams Jr.'s latest patellar soreness update the canary in the coal mine? I think you could say is insert Memphis player's latest insert injury update. You know, I know you've been very frustrated by Memphis recently.
Yeah.
What do you think about what Vince Williams, like the odds of him playing again this season or consistently for the rest of the season?
I think he plays again. But I think he doesn't play every game. They're planting the seed on all these guys to play 2 games, miss a game, play a game, miss 2 games. I think that's just going to be the cycle for the rest of the season. I mean, we've got Kennard. I guess he's playing tonight, but who's to say? He could pop up on the injury report 5 minutes before tip-off. G.G. Jackson, he was really good in the last game, so they're probably going to bench him for the next game. So, yeah, I mean, I haven't been touching Memphis for about a month now, and Vince Williams was probably the guy we could trust a week ago. Now, no, I'm not interested in any of them other than just picking someone up that you are fairly certain is going to play. But even knowing that is hard because we've seen guys that are ruled out, as I said, just before tip-off. So, yeah, Tonight, you might want to stream in Aldama if he's available, Jake LaRavia, Luke Kennard. But then next game, all three of those guys could probably sit.
Yeah, we just don't know. I'm relying on Gigi Jackson and Jake LaRavia in my home dynasty league, because of the amount of other injuries that I'm dealing with, which is, I could rant about it every single time. But it does make it extra frustrating in Memphis, the fact that they have Jordan Goodwin and I think, is it Trey Jemison? That's the other guy that is on like a two-way deal with a limited amount of games. So it's like sometimes they're just active, sometimes they're just inactive, and we don't know until like 5 minutes before tip-off whether they're just active or not. Maybe it's not quite 5 minutes, but it's shortly before. So it makes it really difficult to plan your lineups accordingly, because I know I'm having to stream Jordan Goodwin. I think he's actually questionable with an actual injury tonight. It's not just, is he active or not? So we'll see what that looks like.
Yeah.
Couch Ad said, you guys are awesome and what makes our industry so great. Excuse me. Shout out to Couch Ad. Thank you for always bringing the most difficult dynasty questions I've ever been asked. Makes it a lot of fun. What are your playoff strategies? Kingy, what's your playoff strategy? What do you kind of do just basically?
To try and win, which hasn't gone too well. Look, I mean, injuries at this time of year are unavoidable. Obviously, we're all going through it. But if Wemby had played last week, I'd be playing industry pickups semifinals. Stupid Wemby, and then it's like he was watching my fantasy league. He went, "Yeah, I'm going to sit this week," and then he's come out and played both games of a back-to-back. And meanwhile, Porzingis, I've got a hamstring injury. I don't want to play this week. So, what are the strategies? I think if it's head-to-head league with, I don't know, say 9 category, this is the time of year that I would really focus on strengths. That's usually what I'm doing. So have a look at your opponent, because it's a sort of win or go home kind of situation once you hit the playoffs. So have a look at your opponent, have a look at their injuries, have a look at what their strengths are, where if you're going to dominate rebounds, don't stream rebounds. You want to be streaming the categories that are going to be your swing categories, which are often the low volume ones like steals and blocks. This is sort of why, I'm already thinking about next season, obviously, because we're doing a mock draft. This is why I'm tempted next season just to punt percentages, because it's a hard category to stream. So for me, it's not, because you're not going to really be able to stream. Say you want to boost your free throw percentage. You're probably not going to find a guy that's high volume enough that's going to impact it to the point where it makes a significant difference. Whereas if you need steals, you just stream Matisse Thybulle, or I picked up Chris Paul for this week. So that's a little bit aside. It's a little bit off topic, but for me, that's a plan I might go into for next season, is just not caring about percentages at all. But that's what I tend to do in the playoffs. I tend to look at my strengths, look at my weaknesses, match that up against my opponent, and then stream the categories that are going to be close. And as I said, rebounds. If you've got Wemby and Anthony Davis in a league, you don't need to stream blocks. So don't worry about blocks. So that's probably what I do. Yeah,
I think that's probably the main thing is you're not trying to, especially if it's like a 9-cat league, you just need to win 5-4 each week instead of 6-3, 7-2. It just needs to be 5-4. So you can kind of forget a few of the categories that you can just accept defeat basically early on, emphasize streaming in players that are going to kind of give you, like you said, boost in the swing categories. Then I guess just being kind of smart with your moves, and if you have like a limit on the amount of moves that you're able to make in your league, maybe saving at least one or two. So on the last day, if there is, say, like, whoever wins steals is going to win the matchup. Okay, then a guy like Matisse Thybulle could be a great person or great player to stream on that last day. So making sure you have at least like a move or two for that last day of the week, or at least like last 2 days of the week. in theory, it doesn't really matter, but it's kind of like having the fourth quarter versus the first quarter. Like, whoever scores more over the entire game is who wins, but kind of comes down to that fourth quarter, that last one. Maybe it's just like a more in my head than actually what happens, but just the right there at the end, that last push to try and help you get that matchup win. I think I just said a lot of different words to not really say much, but that happens sometimes. So yeah, I think those are kind of the main things that are pretty general as opposed to specific for your matchup. Is Delano Banton a no-brainer cut, or are you going to hold and see? And added, this is for a 12-team 9-cat league. He got moved to the bench after, I think, 2 really freaking good games, and then got moved to the bench with Scoot Henderson back with no minutes restriction. Is Banton a guy that you're going to kind of wait and see a couple games, or is it kind of like, hey, like Scoot's back, Scoot's healthy, Scoot is going to start the rest of the year, which is what they had previously said?
Yeah, I'm probably okay with moving on. I know that they have got a risk of shutting some players down. Although, funnily enough, we haven't heard anything on Anthony Simons being injured or out with soreness or anything like that. It's really Jeremy Grant is probably the one that we're expecting to move to the sideline at some point, and possibly DeAndre Ayton. But yeah, look, I mean, Banton has been really good, but they've got Chris Murray there as well. They've got Jabari Walker. They've got Duop Reith. They've got Matisse Thybulle. So they've got other young guys that they want to get out there as well. And Banton is probably the one they've got the least invested in. So I think he has been good, but I'd be okay with just moving on, and I'd rather stream his spot.
Yeah, and with Scoot back in the starting lineup and Banton moving to the bench, he had 8 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 threes in 22 minutes. I just don't think that that's worth keeping around. Just to try and see what happens, just because he had a few good games. Now, like you said, if things change in Portland and they do start dealing with injuries, and Banton moves back into the starting lineup, then we've seen what he can do. He's an attractive option. Maybe the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season when they're like fully pulled the plug, then he'll be a great option. But right now, I don't think he's just not worth stashing at this point.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm kind of running out of questions here, but Couchad did add this in because he said this was the first part of his previous comment was no questions, just a shout out to the team for the great year and to Noah for the great job taking over for Zach and Kingy, who despite his own show schedule, jumping into essentially filled the second role full time. We kicked Zach out of here. Finally got rid of him, and now we just kind of go and talk fantasy basketball twice a week in back-to-back days, which has been a lot of fun. So Kingy, shout out to you for hopping in, helping us out here. We don't have any more questions right now, but
I mean, you helped me out too, because I had Zach on my show to start the year, and then we got rid of that bum and moved on and got some real talent onto both shows. Meanwhile, Zach's just sitting at home twiddling his thumbs. So
yeah,
no, look, Zach has been very, very busy man. So hoping to get him back on some shows next year, but we'll see what his schedule looks like. But no, look, I'm always happy. It gives me a reason to get up earlier in the morning and do a show. So
yeah. We have a little bit of time, and if more questions come in, we can answer them. But I figure since we have 20 minutes left with our time, we can talk a little bit about this early mock draft that we've been doing. So I guess since this is the first time we'll have talked about it on this show, why don't you kind of give a little bit of background about what specifically happened in your leagues that led you to go ahead and look ahead to next season?
Yeah, Trey Young happened, and OG Anunoby happened, and a few others. So yeah, look, I think I'm usually the first one to roll out a mock draft. This year I went even earlier, and surprisingly, I sort of put the word out to a whole heap of analysts, and usually there's a little bit of trial and error. A few will say, yep, good, I'm good to go, and then some will say, no, I've got other stuff going on. It's a bit early for me. Everyone said yes. I didn't get a no from anyone this year.
It's huge.
So I'm thinking that other people have also been bitten by the injury bug, as a lot of managers, listeners, readers, watchers, viewers have as well. So, yeah, decided to just run a 14-team, 9-category mock draft for next year. Really, I just wanted to see if Wemby went and won. And when Raphael Johnson got the number 1 pick, I was pretty certain he was going to take Wemby, and he did. What are we? We're almost at the end of the 6th round, which is actually quick. So I was assuming that this draft would take 2 weeks, but we've been getting through like 2 rounds a day, which is good. So we've done a couple of recap shows. I'll be doing another recap show tomorrow night, my time, with NBA Fantasy Bible with Dan. So we'll probably be at the end of round 7 or 8 by then. But it's been fun. We talked about it on my show yesterday. And since then, I want to say, because I made the Miles Bridges pick. Oh, no, you made Zion. You picked Zion.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was tossing up between Franz Wagner and Miles Bridges. I went with Wagner, much to your disgust. And I actually ended up getting Miles Bridges on the way back around. So, ended up pretty well. And we've actually just made our 6th round picks in the last sort of half hour. You went with Jonathan Kuminga at pick, 81. And I went with Onyeka Okongwu at 82.
Yeah, I didn't even have Okongwu in like my queue, which makes me feel like a fake fan. But I know we had talked about him briefly. I don't remember if that was before we even started. It may have been before we even started this. But I went Luka Doncic at 4, and then Alperen Şengün. This was pre-injury, which he actually kind of escaped most of, I guess, what had us scared. I don't think it's quite as serious long-term, but I think it definitely impacts whether he'll be available or not for the next, few weeks of the season. But still really like him heading into next season. And it went De'Aaron Fox, Zion Williamson, Rudy Gobert, and now Jonathan Kuminga in the 6th round, which, I think he was a guy that was definitely outside the top 100 to be drafted this past season. Probably more of considered like a late round swing. But a bunch of guys that are going to miss free throws. So, I'm going to be really good at losing that category, but are still going to, plenty of points to go around, a little bit of, kind of across the board with a few other categories. I'm pretty happy with my team so far. Most of the picks have been fun, which is kind of the goal of an early mock draft, except for Rudy Gobert. That wasn't fun. It just made sense to me. But what do you think about your team so far?
I don't mind my team. So I'm picking one spot ahead of you at pick 3. I got Nikola Jokic, so I can't really complain. As I said, Wemby did go 1 and Shea went at number 2. So I think that's our top 3 for next year, with maybe Luka thrown into the mix in some leagues. I then went with Jalen Brunson, Cade Cunningham, Franz Wagner, Miles Bridges, and Onyeka Okongwu. So look, I don't mind my team. I like Cade. I like having him on my team. Brunson's been really good this year. I think Franz, that's sort of my upside pick, I suppose. I took him at 50 something. I think it was mid-50s. 54. He hasn't quite reached those heights yet, but I've seen enough from him, I think, and from the Magic that I think he could be a top 50 player, maybe top 40 next season. Miles Bridges is, I don't know, we don't know exactly what his role is going to be next year or who he'll be playing for. But I think if we we're certainly not forgiving, but if we sort of look beyond all of the off-court stuff and just focus on him as a fantasy asset, I think he's a top 40 asset as well when he's playing and playing well. And then Okongwu, as we talked about, he was starting before the injury. I feel like he's the future in Atlanta, not Clint Capella. Even Capella's had free run at the center minutes lately, and he's not doing a lot. He's been good. He's been rosterable, but he's not that player that he used to be, where he was getting big double-doubles, multiple blocks. That's just not who he is anymore. So I think Okongwu at pick 82, 83, wherever I took him, I think his floor is sort of top 100, so it's relatively safe. But then if they do end up starting him and playing him 32 minutes, he's got top 40 upside, I think.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the idea last season too. I think it was, I don't remember exactly what his ADP was, but it was around this, maybe a round or two after. But obviously, if Clint Capella's gone, Okongwu was seeing 32 minutes per game as the starting center in Atlanta, and Trey Young is still there because playing alongside Trey, one of the best pick and roll operators in the league, would certainly help him. I think that's another thing that's kind of limiting Capella, along with a little bit of a minutes restriction due to the injury that he was dealing with. But definitely not the same player that he was if Okongwu was starting at center alongside Trey Young at point guard. Then I think, this is going to be incredible value to get him at 82 there. We'll move away from the draft real quick, and then maybe we'll come back to it. But Cow Chad hit us with the breaking news here. Steph Curry has been cleared to resume on-court workouts. According to the Warriors, he will do so in the Bay Area before rejoining the team for practice on Friday in LA. That is breaking news here from Cow Chad. We actually had Kendra Andrews from ESPN tweet that out. But then Cow Chad hit us with it, so that was huge. So obviously he's not going to play Wednesday.
No.
And then he'll have a chance to play on Friday. And that is, I'm trying to quickly pull up who that's against. That's against the Lakers on Saturday. Excuse me. He's going to rejoin the team on Friday. Chance to play on Saturday. So for this next game, it should be, once again, Chris Paul running the show, running the offense, and providing really solid value for the Warriors. I mean, I know you said that you picked him up, which kind of surprised me. He was on a waiver wire, but should be a good option.
Yeah, I think so. All I picked him up for is it's an 8-team league, so it is
makes more sense.
Shallower, yeah. All I picked him up for was assists and steals, really. And then yesterday he gave me no steals, but he gave me plenty of assists and 19 points or something.
And 9 rebounds.
And 9 rebounds, which I don't need rebounds either. But yeah, he's he should continue. I mean, even once Curry's back, he was playing decent minutes off the bench. And if you have picked him up, you don't pick Chris Paul up to score because he doesn't score anymore usually. So you pick him up for assists and steals, and he's been doing that most nights. So, yeah, I think keep rolling with him, even if Curry comes back Saturday. I wouldn't then go, oh, do I need to drop Chris Paul? Because what he's bringing you doesn't change.
Yeah. And we'll call this a little early, but one more question about this draft before we call the episode. And obviously, if you're wanting to stay up to date with the picks as we go along with them, you can follow either of us on Twitter. If you're watching, you can see the screen here at AdamKing91, at NoRubin22. But what do you think is the most surprising pick to you so far now that we're over halfway, almost 6 rounds through the draft? Was there any pick that, as soon as it went in, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so early? Or maybe not like that's horrible, that's early, but just like, wow, like what a rise from last season? Or if there is any, like just incredible value picks?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this. Who did I do the first? Oh, with Matty G, we did the show and we covered the first couple of rounds. For me, Bam Adebayo was a little bit high. He went at like pick 20.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Let me just have a look if it was. Oh, I can't even see it all. But
it was the 8th pick of round 2, so maybe pick 22. Yeah.
That felt a little bit high for me, and part of that is probably the fact that I'm just soured on him a bit because he didn't really do much for me this year. So he was probably high. I was interested to see where LaMelo went. He went with the 2nd pick of the 3rd round, and I feel like he's probably going to be top 25 next season. I don't think he falls that far. Even despite all of the ankle stuff, I still think people are going to try and get him back into the 2nd round in certain leagues. And then I feel like there was someone else. No, I mean, we're noticing the decline of some of these older players. I've talked about that on a couple of the shows. Kevin Durant went at pick 21, James Harden at 19, LeBron went 5th pick of the 4th round. So people are, I guess, starting to shift and target more of these young guys. Anthony Davis at pick 13 in the first round is incredible. And yeah, Embiid at 5 is. I'm not touching Embiid next season. Yeah, they're probably it for me. I don't think there's again, it's a mock draft, so people are just swinging for the fences with certain picks. So I don't think there's anything egregious in there where there's a top 20 player that's fallen to 60 or anything like that. So yeah, I don't know. That's probably it for me.
Yeah. A few of the ones that I thought were they were just exciting. Jalen Johnson went with the 12th pick of round 3, which is pick 40, which I was hoping he made it back around to me. I considered him a little bit with my 3rd round pick, which would have been pick 32.
Yeah.
So that was cool to see him go that early. I won't be surprised if that's kind of where he's taken next year. Desmond Bane, I thought, went a little late, so that was a great value to get him 3rd pick of the 4th round, which I think is 45. Seeing Brandon Miller go in the middle of round 5 was cool. Kobe White going a few picks after that. I thought those obviously huge risers from last season, but obviously they played really well, so that's not super surprising, but just kind of cool to see. Yeah, those were some of the ones that I really liked. And then we'll hit this question real quick. Just dropped Tyler Hero in my 10-team 9-cat head-to-head league and picked up Corey Kispert. I'm currently at 4th place with a chance of missing out on the top 6. What do I do with Jaren Jackson and Isaiah Hartenstein? Yeah, Hero's out again tonight, so no issues dropping him. And Kispert, with Rashawn Holmes out, should still see a ton of minutes. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. It's going to be dependent on points and threes a lot there. But what are you kind of doing with Hartenstein and Jaren Jackson?
Oh, yeah, I think the ship has sailed in terms of trading Jaren Jackson. I don't think you're just not going to get anything back for him worthwhile now. So I don't think I'd be dropping him. This doesn't feel to me like a shutdown. It's as I said, similar with Vince Williams and all of these other guys. I think it's more of a in and out kind of situation where he'll play a couple of games and trade deadline's over anyway. So he's probably going to be tough to trade. I'm just having a look at Hartenstein's minutes because I know, I don't have him anywhere. I think I'd be okay with dropping Hartenstein. He's only playing 20 minutes. He came back too early. Probably shouldn't even be playing now. He's done unless you need rebounds. I just don't think they're utilizing him or he's playing enough to warrant holding especially in a 10-team league.
Yeah, that's basically how I'd feel about it. Fine dropping Hartenstein unless they say that they're going to play more minutes, but it really seemed like when he first came back that he was saying, hey, I'm coming back early to help the team, but I'm not fully healthy. I'm going to have a minutes restriction, but we want to win. So great for him, great for the Knicks, but not great for fantasy. No issues dropping him. Jaren Jackson, I'd probably wait a little bit before dropping him. They play again tomorrow, 2 home games back-to-back, Washington and Charlotte. So we probably wouldn't even know until maybe a little bit before this time tomorrow whether he's going to play in that game. But if he's out again, then I would assume that he's back Saturday against the Thunder, and that's their last game of the week. So I don't think you drop Jaren Jackson just because he's missing this game. I think that when he's on the court, he's too good to just drop. So I'd be trying to hold out and just hoping that he's available moving forward and that this is just a 1-game absence, or, maybe they are just sitting him out the first leg of a back-to-back and he'll just miss 1 leg of a back-to-back for the rest of the season. I don't even know how many they have left, but I think you just kind of hope that he's available. That's probably all you really can do. At this point.
And I'm just something just tweeted out then about Şengün. Not that this is really any different to what we suspected, but suffered a grade 3 right ankle sprain and will miss several weeks. So his season's done. Grade 3, he's not playing again this year.
Yeah, I mean, several weeks. I'm pretty sure there's like 4 left in the season. So yeah.
Marcus Smart had a grade 3 and he's missed 8 years. So,
but. Well, actually, I was going to say that's Memphis. Everybody's out for that long, but
yeah, grade
Houston's
3 is typically sort of 4 to 6 weeks at a minimum, and then ease back in. And Rockets are 11th, I think, in the West or something. So they
5 games back of the Warriors. So it would take quite the run.
Yeah, and he's obviously got that ankle sprain, but he also suffered a bone bruise in his knee.
Yeah.
Which is not an insignificant injury either.
No. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. We almost made it to a full hour, so that's pretty good considering like 15 minutes ago we were running out of things to talk about. So, Kingy, as always, thanks for joining me. Is there anything that we should be checking out from you over the next few weeks along with this mock draft?
No, as I said, I'll have my usual show tomorrow. A little bit tricky for the US people to watch it because it's at like 5 a.m. Eastern time or something. So we always get a lot of people though watching along. So we'll just be talking about the mock draft and probably doing some hypothetical trades. Probably going to shift our focus into next year. So coming up with a couple of names and who would we prefer next year. Then our usual shows. We'll be back next week. Playoffs are sort of in full swing now, so we've got about a month left of the regular season, and then FBI will be kicking off our playoff leagues. So I would say B-Dub will release some information about those very soon. We'll try and get those filled, and then move straight into draft-only leagues for next year, dynasty leagues. So plenty happening over at follow FBI on Twitter at FBI Basketball, I think. And then FBIbasketball.com is the website. Our Discord server is always really busy during the off season. So if you're running out of people to talk to about fantasy basketball, jump into our Discord server. There's lots of people in there with nothing better to do.
Definitely. And you can, as I said earlier, you can follow both of us on Twitter at NoRubin22 and at AdamKing91. Thank you all for joining us for this episode, and good luck with your playoffs.